Vicky, you should be live.
Hello.
Robert should now be live. I can't say that I'm a past master at this. I'm kind of playing with being a host for the first time. So there is a window under Share where I believe you can input images off your PC if you guys want.
Okay.
Welcome to everybody attending. If you wish to put questions into these two fine folks who are from Obatron, which, by the way, is a rather fascinating new setting for both Systemless and Savage Worlds. See, I read about you guys.
You're prepared.
Please go ahead and type it into the box on the left-hand side where it says chat. I have a couple questions I want to get things started with, but I want to make sure everybody is comfortable. Vicky, I don't have you on camera yet. Can we do that?
Oh, yes, that would be helpful. 1 second. We already
she's
went
gorgeous,
through this.
folks. You're going to be glad she turned on the camera, believe me.
Oh, you're being too kind.
I'm a lucky person.
Okay, here I'm should be coming up shortly.
All right.
It won't be that
and one short aside for our attendees, Robert, I'm actually a Chicago person. I'm a Milwaukee transplant. What can I tell you? You'll notice by the accent that I'm from Chicago, okay? All right? Yeah. All right. Anyway, good to meet you guys this morning. Again, and I'm going to let you do a little background on the system, but I wanted to inform everybody of my opinion as an outsider. It really is this fascinating new, almost tribal system, and I don't want to say system. It's a tribal campaign world that you can play in with. It looks like, and I want to say, it looks like you guys have also put in character development for characters specific to the world. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And it's designed as a two-part approach. It's partly a specific add-on for Savage Worlds, and then, frankly, pretty much anything you want to play. So there's a setup for Savage Worlds, and there's a setup for anything else you might want to play. I only glossed over the Systemless because I'm an old first edition guy, but it looks really easily convertible for what I play. So why don't you guys tell us more about Obatron before I get too wordy?
I don't think you've been too wordy at all. I appreciate the introduction. Thanks for having us here today. Obatron Productions started in 2012 with the idea of this world where it's going to be a little different from traditional fantasy. We didn't actually intend for it to be completely different from traditional fantasy. That was something that evolved along the development process. And Tunziel it is something we do describe as tribal fantasy, so you're dead on with referring to the tribal aspect. In fact, it was actually Bob's brainchild. He started developing some ideas, started talking to me about it, and said, okay, now here you go write something. So, Bob, why don't you tell folks a bit about how you came up with the idea, where it started from?
Well, it was more of I wanted something slightly different than typical Western fantasy. I wanted something different from Eastern fantasy, and I thought, well, I love dinosaurs, so it's got to have dinosaurs, so this takes it backwards some time periods. And I wanted to try to achieve something that was slightly different than the typical fantasy races, but not get caught up into these are just rebranded elves or these are rebranded dwarves. So I wanted something to try to come up with something that was different. So I figured, but they also had to be similar enough that it wasn't too foreign to play. So I kind of just started thinking about it and said, okay, so wrapping around dinosaurs, it's got to be back in the days of dinosaurs, and at the same time add the fantasy elements back into it. And somewhat, I guess, probably in reality, I think back in the old Land of the Lost days from my childhood, not the newer Land of the Lost, it kind of that kind of humor I wanted into it as well. But then I wanted it to be really a savage world and not just a savage races.
Let me ask something that'll perhaps aid the outsider such as myself who hasn't yet played this system but is kind of dying to. So our primary antagonists, protagonists, and setting? Is it Bronze Age, Iron Age, something completely unique to itself, which mixes both modern and Stone Age? You tell me.
Actually, we've avoided it being modern.
It's mostly Stone Age because the gods, the whole premise is that this god has fallen to the world, so the mountains of the land are the base, the body of the god. So they can't really dig into the mountains, so there's no metal. It's really a forbidden thing. So it's all stones and sticks, and it's really the antagonist of the world is the world itself.
Right.
It's not so much, there's no there is kind of an evilish race, but predominantly it's the world that's out to get you.
Will we see Sleestaks?
Not really. I mean, in a certain way, you could probably argue that our skin eaters are Sleestaks, but in a much more sinister and dark fashion. I did take. It's not really a humorous setting because I did have a lot, but it's really supposed to be more of your struggle against the nature of the world, the beast. It's not really centered around the idea of just fighting, orcs or fighting goblins. It's really
I'm going to
more.
try to share a screenshot here.
Oh, good. Yes.
I'm going to attempt it. I'm not sure.
While you pull that up, Vicki, Robert, would you characterize it as more dark fantasy, or, if I can use the term, survivalist fantasy?
Probably more survivalist fantasy, because really, I ran one of our scenarios that's going to be published in the not too distant future here called Hunted at Gen Con, and it's really, I got a lot of good feedback for it, but it's about, so it's like a group of people are trying to go rescue an elder son who is on his rites of passage quest. And inside there, it was not just the fact that there's this kind of skin eater incursion, so they're kind of being hunted by the skin eaters, but they end up being hunted by various dinosaurs. There's weather things happening all the way down while they're trying to rescue this young man.
I'm fascinated by the skin eaters term. It absolutely gives me the willies every time you use it. How are we doing, Vicki?
Which I love, because you're not the first person who has said that, so that's good to hear that it's invoking the kind of, oh, crud, I don't want to run into that kind of person that we were going for. That's what we wanted. We wanted people to not want to run into them.
I almost want to say, so there's also a significant horror aspect to this.
There can be. When we started developing this and Bob was looking at me to do a lot of the writing, we created the sandbox together, and part of what came of that was we want something that makes you say, okay, there's a real danger to this world. It's not just remanufactured stuff that we've done in games we've played. We want it to be something that's different but relatable, and the horror really is what came in for the skin eater part of it, at least. We wanted it to not be just one flavor. We no pun intended.
Oh, jeez.
we didn't want it to be just one thing. We wanted people to have the ability to play some horror, but in the same setting. We wanted people to be able to play kind of a high fantasy, but in the same setting. We did want people to be able to play the man against the world or the world against the man in terms of the real environment, not just each other in the same setting. So the world of Penziel is thousands of miles in any direction, a lot of differentiation between geographical regions. You've got the wetlands, which is swampy. You've got the drylands, which, as the name implies, is dry. It's desert. You've got the footlands, which are jungle. You've got the mountains, which are tremendous ranges in height, in the width, everything. So you've got just kind of the nice little forests that have evergreens that are huge, but they're there. But you also have the serious heights. So with the geographical divisions in the land that allows for a lot of different kind of play. And that was one of the things that, as we developed it, became important. So you can do many things within the same setting to suit your style of gaming, including playing something that's horror, playing something that gives you the willies, or playing something that's strategic in combat, because there are tribes, and tribes don't always get along. So there's not the same kind of, okay, you have a king, you have a queen, you've got this hierarchy of nobility. Instead of that, you have a tribal system where people don't necessarily care that you're so-and-so's son or that you're so-and-so's cousin. If they want what you've got, if you've got the right kind of people, they're not not necessarily going to be nice about it, and they might just want to try to take it. And ramifications be damned. There's not the political structure in the same sense as we often encounter in fantasy games. So we want to do quite a few different things with it and allow it to be the kind of place that people can do what they want with it. Regardless of what our vision was, we want people to be able to do what they want with it.
How important how important is magic too, Robert, in the system?
Well,
how prevalent?
I mean, I wanted to have more. I tend to like more gritty type. I mean, obviously, I'm playing Savage Worlds, and a lot of people argue that it's not really gritty. But then again, my players will argue otherwise. But I'm not a big. So there's not a lot of magic in the world. It's more. There's some that's kind of. I tried to. So when we did Tribal, I tried to pick elements of what I understood as various tribal beliefs and things like that, but I realized that in doing this I can never really do justice to real tribes of the world. So I didn't try to emulate like Indian tribes, and right. So I really took just elements of what people off the stereotypes and tried to mix them all together to create something of new tribal. So when you said it almost seems tribal, I'm like happy, because I don't want people to look at it and say, well, you really misrepresented this. And so in part of that, I wanted the magic to represent kind of that feel as well. So there's a shamanistic aspect with the elders and the various smaller tribes, but the magic tends to be, I tried to more emulate around the idea of what that would feel like, and also be within the Savage Worlds magic, because I didn't want to create a whole new system of things.
That's why we did systemless as well as Savage Worlds. We wanted it to be played in Savage Worlds, but we wanted everybody else to be able to do it too. But we didn't want to have to do the work to convert it to a bunch of different systems.
All right. So there's no magic items really. I mean, the shamans will have a focus that they have to do their magic. And then there's like tattoo magic.
Awesome.
So, and that one of my ideas later is to write a supplement and kind of expand upon that. It's been one of my goals when I have time. But there's really, you don't get to see a lot of like magic. You don't see swords and rings or anything like that.
Well, and I think I speak for everyone when I tell you, no, just start writing it, Robert. There's never time, okay? See this? It only gets grayer.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I notice you guys have everything currently available as PDF.
Yes.
Any thoughts about a print option in the future?
We have a print option.
Okay. All right.
But it's just direct. We are looking at the possibility of distribution, but right now the print options are available when we go to conventions. We had a bunch when we went to Gen Con. We are going to Origins this year. I just got confirmation that yes, they've got space for us, so we are going to do that. So we will have print at conventions. As far as actually making it available to retail stores, just recently I did put a link on our site saying, if you're interested, please let us know directly, because I'm happy to work with retailers. Just right now, some folks may not realize, but in order to get into distribution, you have to be able to withstand the cuts that are required for discounting and wholesaling and getting into distribution. And being the tiny little company that we are, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so we're not quite there yet where we can afford to do it. People aren't aware of Tunzeal enough for us to say there's demand, and yes, retailers, there's going to be lots of people coming in and asking for this. So yes, distributors, you need lots of this. So instead, right now we are doing it direct. We had our first brick and mortar retailer contact us just 3 days ago and say, "Hi, I'm interested. Can you tell me what you're doing for wholesale?" I said, "Yes, I'm in the middle of redoing my marketing stuff, including a sales sheet. Give me just a little while, and I will get that to you." So I'm delighted that has happened, and we do want to be in distribution. We're just not there yet. So in the meantime, we do have printed copies in our great big warehouse we call our apartment, and we are willing to do this direct. And we are actually just now getting ready to set up with getting the proper tax authorization to be able to sell from our website. That won't be until 2014 because it's not going to happen in the next 6 weeks. But people will be able to buy direct from us as an interim until we are into stores, and if we are until we are actually at more conventions to sell the products from.
Do you have any plans for putting the print available through drive-thru? I noticed most of your stuff on drive-thru. I'm sorry.
It is
for
on
folks
drive-thru.
let me interrupt for just a second. For folks that are looking for Obatron, at the very, very least, you can find it at drivethrurpg.com. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I have contemplated that. I have not decided 100% that I want to do that. I'm kind of feeling out what the options are at the moment.
Okay.
One thing I don't want to do is have it through print on demand and try to get the retailers to buy into it, and then turn around and look and say, well, if you're print on demand, why should I bother carrying you? You're small as it is. I'd be taking a chance on you as it is, and now you're adding one more level of competition. I hate to hot seat you,
but I'm gonna, because I'm like that. What about a drive-through price that's $2 more than you sell to for MSRP at retail? I'm sorry, for manufacturer suggested retail price to the retailer. In other words, let's say
that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of it.
Obatron is $24.95. If you buy it at the retailer, it's $26.95 through drive-through.
That's an interesting idea, and that would be part of why I haven't made a decision on how to do it yet, is because I'm still trying to figure out things like exactly what you just offered as an idea as to how to make it work. That's a great idea that I hadn't considered.
I fully understand and respect, believe me, the thought, let's protect the brick and mortars that support our product line. I'm faced with these decisions myself, but this isn't my chat. So, but
it's a helpful thing for us, so thank you.
By the same token, and by the way, folks, I've been at this since about 82, before there was even print on demand. But I know my gaming group on Sunday, when they saw this, went, when can we get the books? And no, they don't want the laptop version. They want the hard print that you showed me on your screen there.
And that's why we did do that, because we like both. We like PDF, but we like to have the hard copy. I personally like to be able to do the one thing you might not have seen is I have little pieces of paper stuck between the pages. And they're not sticky, so they're not going to ruin my paper, but I do have little pieces of paper because I had a game I was running yesterday. I want to make sure that I can quickly get to it. And although I 100% at a game table will have my laptop, and yes, I will have my PDF, I also have my book beside me. Sometimes it's just nicer. Sometimes it's just easier. And if I want to show them something that's in the book, I can hand it to them. They can pass it around, and I can continue to tell the story, and people can continue to have their turns without me, having turned my laptop around. And I like having both.
We have Stephen in with us as our primary attendee right now, and I want to direct this so that perhaps he gets a little information he'd be looking for. He runs a brick and mortar. How does he get in touch with you guys to get a hold of your products for his store right now? Is there a way to do that?
Right now, if it's easier for him to go to our website than to send me messages, he can go to obatron.com. That's obatron.com. And I do have a product page there that has the link to just get right to us and talk to me, and we can work that out. And Bob just tossed that into the chat window, so you can just click there, and there's the product page that Actually, something went awry with some images just over the last few days. So I will be repopulating those, but you can see the product page and the descriptions of each of the things that are there. And of course, send me a message, and I am still working on that sell sheet, so I will send you a sell sheet.
I gotta cut down on my smoking, I guess. I wanted to ask some specific questions as well about the character creation process. How much of that is included? Do we add on to a Savage World system? Do we? And I want to use a Pathfinder analogy if I can. Not that I'm a huge Pathfinder fan. I am a fan. Okay, props where credit is due. But as most of the OGL systems did, what they did was they pretty much almost started over. They use the same stat blocks, if you will, if I can use that analogy, but they create their own character creation process. How in-depth is the character creation process for and you know what, I'm going to murder the pronunciation. Tunzel? Tunzel. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, that's gorgeous art.
I'm trying. Here we go. I'm not sure if this is working the way I want it to.
It looks pretty good from where I'm sitting. Who is your artist? That is just fantastic stuff.
We had 5 absolutely wonderful freelancers we worked with. The one that did this particular lineup is that was Joshua Pincus, and he has a website, truepincus.com. And you can actually go to the Obatron production site, obatron.com, and see about us. And I've got all of our artists' names and links to their websites from our site. So if you like the art, please visit our artists. They sell all kinds of cool stuff. But Joshua Pincus is the one that did this racial lineup. So that was our very first image to come up with what these folks looked like based on our descriptions of them. And that was his rendition was what all the other artists used as reference material to go through and create the rest of theirs.
These are available races, if you will, then? Is that what I'm looking at?
Except for the one that looks really menacing, that is between the middle guy and the really big guy. That's the Skin Eater, the one that's got the little swirly magical thing going on right there. So you can't play him unless you're the GM. There's a reason you want to be a GM. So, you get to do what the players can't. So one of ours is having the Skin Eater, and quickly from the far left. For the far left is the Javelid. She's a blue-skinned woman. They have sort of a blurriness about them to some degree, kind of like if you think of seals that are in the water, because they do endure a lot of the cold. They live all over the mountains, including the very highest levels. Next to her is the Gale, and that's a representation of our desert people, which they're the ones that look the most like like humans, but their skin is a bit leathery. They have nictitating membranes over their eyes like snakes do. In the middle is our Kresh. He is an amphibious sort of biped, lives in the swamplands. Those folks are the most obviously not human of all of the group. And of course, there's that Skin Eater again. And the Skin Eaters, a bit about them is they are actually cousins to the Kresh. The same goddess that created the Kresh went insane and created the Skin Eaters, but her brothers didn't know about them until it was too late. And there's a whole history of the gods and the goddess and how they had their exchange between them and then creating the races. The Skin Eaters actually have to eat skin to survive, and they do best by eating the skin of others that are the bipedal races, rather than the targs that are kind of like a miniature T-Rex. They don't do as well off of animal skins as they do the others, which is unfortunate for the others. And then off to the right is the Kryn, which is a red-skinned race that has kind of like the goat horns, and they are the enormous race of the group. They're also extremely passionate. They're passionate whether they are enjoying themselves and they're just having a great big time. Drink as much as you want, smoke whatever you want. do pretty much whatever you want. On the other hand, they're also extremely passionate if you have ticked them off. So they're very passionate in war. Great allies, not so much for people who are against you. Not you don't necessarily want them to be your opponent, but they're great allies. So that's a bit about the races in a nutshell as to some of the distinguishing characteristics one to the other.
What was the approach on that you kind of decided on that? And maybe it's wide open, so maybe there isn't a right answer here. But for instance, are they all evolutionary races that in later fantasy worlds were narrowed down into things like elves, dwarves, gnomes? So these were all just still there because it's ancient past, and they all evolved from the lower life forms, or were they warped by magic? Or you tell me, what was the approach on those, or have you left that open for the GM to decide and customize?
Well, our approach was that the gods and goddess created each of those races. That is their theology. That is their belief. That they were each created by a specific god or goddess. There is no concept of them having evolved.
Okay.
This is actually not Earth either. This is, it's completely not Earth. This is not an alternative Earth.
They're molded by godlike power.
Exactly. That's
okay.
and that is our fervent belief. In fact, that's one of the we didn't want to do a lot of very fine. This is the way this works in the system in terms of political agendas or destiny. But one thing we did do was decide that the Skin Eaters, who again they are cousins to the Crush, that the Skin Eaters were created by the same goddess, Sarah. And they believe with absolute every fiber of their being that they are Sarah's chosen people, because they're the last ones made ever. They believe they're her chosen people. They believe that she is destined to be awakened from her slumber that her brothers put her under, because man, she's gone flaky. Look what she just did. They believe that one day she will be awakened, and it's their job to basically be the power over the continent. It's their job to try to convert the races to follow them, even though they also weren't happy to chew on them so they can survive. So they are the people who are the bad guys, but at the same time, they don't necessarily kill every person they encounter. They might have some other things on their minds instead, because ultimately they believe they're supposed to be the dominant race. They're special, they're super, they're the last, and of course they're dominant because they need to eat you, so they must be dominant. So that's really the only kind of bit of destiny, fate kind of thing that we have put in for this is a belief that they, with all their think can happen, and that gives folks who want to do kind of the grand, maybe advance the timeline to a point where the Skin Eaters really are getting a foothold into different areas, and they really are starting to be dominant rather than be sort of isolated up to the coldest or past the coldest region. Their area is not cold, but it's past the coldest region of the continent.
Let me ask you too. I want to switch gears just a little bit. What's coming up for fiction? I noticed you guys show that you on the website, and in fact, I think there's even mentions on Drive-Thru that there's some fiction planned for this. When can we look forward to seeing novels, short stories? You tell me.
That's going to be next year, probably by about second quarter or so. I do have one piece of fiction that's specifically about Tunziel that I have started, but sort of has some scenarios I needed to write instead of the fiction. So that's sort of, it's in the works, but it's not far enough along to release to anybody for anything. But I also have a couple other folks that are writers that are pitching some ideas to me about novels that they want to write, or novellas. They don't have to be full-length novels that they want to do, and that's going to those. It depends largely on how fast they actually get me their pitches, and how fast they're actually doing the writing, as to when people other than us are releasing or having products released through Obatron and through our Obatron Fiction branch. So that should be, the hope at this point is second quarter 2014 is when we'll start actually releasing that. I have some research yet to do on, how best to do formatting for ebooks. What are we doing? What is available for print on demand that is for fiction. I mean, I know plenty of print on demand for game books, but really doing due diligence to do the best job we can for the people who trust us. Right. To vet what they're doing, to get it properly edited, to reach out and get proper illustration, and to make their dreams come true in terms of having presentable to the public for purchase. So, there's still some work that I've got to do on that back end. But 2014 is when we're looking at that being the case. And at first we had thought we would get to it by the end of 2013. And it became clear as we did things like move households and get involved in having a booth at Gen Con, shared with some other folks that we had not initially thought we were going to do when we set up our initial timeline. It became evident through those sorts of advances and changes in our lives. Okay, we need to recalibrate our timeline and actually put this off until 2014, because one thing that we refuse to do is do a kind of a crackpot job. We want to make sure that anything we do for ourselves or others is as good as we possibly can make it for everybody.
Well, you're as good as your last product, believe me. Yeah.
And we want that to be great.
Yes. Tell me what's coming up then. Being that we're looking second quarter before we start seeing some of the fiction, what is everybody working on right now?
So one of the things that we've been working on, we have 4 different supplements that's actually in the Tunziel RPG. We have Isiku River, which is a game. If we've got some players, I'll be playing following this interview, and if we don't, then it'll be something I continue to play at other places. So we have Isiku River, which is essentially a kid's disappeared after his rites of passage. He failed his rites of passage, and his mom is she's basically one of the bigwigs in the tribe, and she's so it was especially a blow to his ego that great. I failed this, and I'm the bigwig son, so I have to, so I have to bear the shame of having failed it. But then he disappears, and unfortunately for him, the rites of passage are continuing. Other people have completed theirs yet to pass or fail, so the mom can't just stop what she's doing and go out. I mean, she's one of the bigwigs. She can't just stop and go search for her son, but she's desperate to get help. So the party is the one that ends up being tasked with, find my son. I don't know what's happened to him. So that's coming up. We also have a Caravan of Troubles, which Caravan of Troubles is actually going to be a bit longer than what we thought it was going to be when we first envisioned it. That one is there's a Kresh elder who has seen a vision of a future event and feels absolutely compelled to cross across the wetlands, the mountain range, the Barrack Mountains, all the way over to the drylands to go warn this entirely different group of people. This elder's never met one of the Gale people, never met them, the folks from the desert, but feels compelled that they must travel and they must actually get to this person. They've got to do it in person. So to warn them of a threat and to try to, the person that the elder has seen in a dream. So the party is tasked with this long travel. It's a caravan. They're using there's no money in tons, so it's all barter. So right. There's an annual meeting. There's one huge annual powwow, if you will, for trade that occurs close to the Gale land, and this elder feels like we need to use this as an excuse so people don't question why I'm coming across all of this way. And the party is tasked with escorting caravan through all of this wild. I mean, it's not like you have highways. It's not like you have highways. It's not like it's not like the land's flat. It's not like there's bridges everywhere. There are some, not many. So they're going across and they're escorting this elder, and because the elder's using the caravan as an excuse to travel, they're also escorting this whole caravan. So it's not just like one person that's much easier to escort than dozens. So that's coming up And that one gets a bit into some of the political intrigue that is possible in the tribal setting. Then we also have a couple others that are in outline form that haven't been put out just yet. And there was Hunted that Bob's got done. He's the primary writer on that one. So there's Hunted that he described to you a little bit earlier. That's something that I'll be doing some polishing up on and get that to our editors, and then we'll be releasing Hunted as well. The last one that we've got on the docket that hasn't been play tested yet and is just an outline form right now is called Seeds of Destruction. And Seeds of Destruction ties into one of the concepts in Tunziel that it's a shame to not have your own tribe. If your tribe is destroyed, it's like if your tribe is destroyed or if you get banished from your tribe, those are marks of shame. And these are things that get you ostracized from your own great tribe, because there are 5 great tribes, and within those, and those are broken down around geographical and racial lines. But those are broken down to smaller tribes. So if you kind of think about, in America, we have all these states. We're all Americans, but we have all these different states. So we might also be someone from Illinois. We might be someone who's from New York. So it's the same kind of thing with the idea of the tribes, is you might be from this great tribe, but you've got your own little tribe within that. So to have your tribe destroyed is a shameful thing, and you want to not have that. So there's Seeds of Destruction where someone is where there is an active effort to destroy a particular tribe, and they need the party's help to stop it and figure out what's going on and reverse the process. So those are the things that we've got as far as Tunziel coming out over the course of the next several months. As far as fiction, we do have the piece I started on Tunziel, which as yet is unnamed. I'm trying to get that.
I always name my products last too. Don't feel bad.
You always do what?
I always put the title on last. That's the last thing I do on a product, is I put a title on.
Okay.
Tim Cass does it the opposite way. He titles it first and then writes it, but not me. So don't worry.
For us, it all depends. We've got all, some of the RPG stuff, easier to have a title and then go from the title, because sometimes the title is sort of a synopsis of the idea. But the fiction, not so much. The fiction is not necessarily. So there is a fiction piece.
I'm hoping, Robert, she hasn't stolen all of the thunder. Did she leave you anything to cover in terms of upcoming projects?
Well, she's our
line developer.
She's the line developer, so she has to steal the thunder. Plus, she's also the face of Obatron. I'm kind of the background person.
I was going to say, she makes it sound like like Vicky does all the work. Robert's just there to make the place look pretty. I mean, all right. So.
She does do all the work. She's done the lion's share of the work. I'm kind of the I have ideas, I put them forward, and she does. And I let her run with all the work, and then I kind of sit back and relax. So.
Okay, well, there's a little bit of truth to that, but some of the things that we share tasks on, like Bob is the one who often comes up with some of these ideas, and he's always going to be the person that I go to and say, okay, is this the direction you were thinking of? And how do you want to go about this? Now, when it comes to the setting itself, with the setting itself, like I said, the whole setting was his brainchild. And we co-developed the entire setting guide, looking at the beast. I did a lot of the research part, but he certainly was the hands-on. And I'm talking again now because he mentioned to you earlier he was modest.
Well, so Vicky basically stole this idea from you, Robert. That's where we are. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
No. Hey.
I mean, as you saw, my wife does play, but mostly she brings me coffee, and I like that arrangement. So yeah.
I'm also the rule person, so I tend to be the rules and try to ensure that we're somewhat within the rules and don't vary too much from them. And Vicky comes up with some idea, and I'm like, oh great, how am I going to make that work in Savage Worlds?
Now, Chris, I will defend myself on this one. Bob's the one that comes up with these ideas and says, here's a great idea, go write it.
Then she comes back and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do this in Savage Worlds?
But here's how you fix them, Vicki. After you're done writing it, you say, "Fine, you edit it and lay it out." Go book art.
No.
She doesn't want me editing.
No. he is fantastic at editing rules. He's fantastic at editing rules. I will have him proofread, but he's not an editor.
But I know you guys have been at this officially since 2012. Yes.
Right, but we didn't actually release our products for sale until 2013. We did a Kickstarter at the end of November because we wanted to participate in Free RPG Day.
Right.
And we used that funds to create a printed version of Tenziel Quick Starts and Sidetracks, which is not a quick start rules because, well, it's for Savage Worlds, which already has its own quick.
Right.
And it's also Systemless, which you use whatever rules you want. But we did do a synopsis within the quick start of what the world is, so you can actually find some uses for it, even if you don't have the Tenziel setting guide. But that was something that we did so that people can get a taste of what Tenziel was. We put forth 6 different, what we refer to as the quick starts, which are kind of, here's like half page of an idea to get you started into a campaign. You know, as a GM, get your creative juices flowing. Here's a place to start. We did the sidetracks, which there's 10 of them, so that you can have something you can kind of string together and do either a very short campaign with, or you can use to intersperse where, okay, we usually have 5 players at the table and 2 of them are gone. We can't do what I planned, but here's a sidetrack that we can just slot right in.
Right.
So we did that, and that's what we did with the Kickstarter fund. So we 2 things that are outstanding on fulfilling the Kickstarter, which I'm hoping to have in the next couple of weeks. I really planned on having them done a while back, but it didn't work. So now we're going to have them in the next couple of weeks for our backers. But we started actually selling in 2000.
Well, the reason I ask is because, over the decades, and in fact, everybody I work with in both companies, we all have our own processes. And I wanted to give Stephen some insight. What is your base process? I mean, we write and then we edit and then we lay out and then we book art. Is there any graven in stone process at Obatron? You tell me.
Bob, you want to talk?
Well, we're still fairly new, so some of the processes, I think we started in a certain way and did things, with the first release of Tenziel, and we've learned a lot from that, and so I don't think we have anything set in stone yet, because we're still kind of like, okay, now next time we do this, we're going to do this differently. So we're developing a lot of those processes, I think.
Okay. Really, as far as anything set in stone, the only thing we really have set in stone is that you really truly want to make sure that when we put something out that it has been well edited. I've got 2 editors. I needed to get the quick starts out too fast to actually have them take a look at that one, but that was a much smaller project. So that was something that was easier for me to put down and look at a week with fresh eyes, and then see the stupid things that I did wrong and go back and fix them. But as far as going forward, the absolute intent is to make sure that you've got 2 people who are editing it. We've for the setting guide, I took half of it, shifted to one editor, took the other half, shifted to the other editor, had them do their thing, had them both send it back to me, accept whatever changes that made sense, which most of them did. So accept their changes, and then after accepting those changes, I shipped the opposite halves, opposite editor. So all of it got looked at by 2 different people, and then of course went back and did proofreading process again.
Right.
Even so, I still found after I printed, crud, I missed this. So you don't. Sometimes you still end up with a few things that you're just kind of like, oh no. But that is part of the learning process, and that is part of the growing pain. Starting a new company is knowing what things that you might introduce after you do the edits make an error. So that's part of what we've been doing. Editing is the one thing that really. This is the set in stone. And illustrating. I draw great stick people. That's it.
I think the other thing that we've learned is don't move in the middle of a Kickstarter And
Yeah.
and doing our initial release.
Don't feel when we migrated to Wisconsin, I told my wife, we're not doing this again. I'm going to die here, okay? But no, and the other thing is, frankly, you never want to edit your own stuff, especially if you're close, because you always know what you meant, you know.
Absolutely.
Stephen wanted me to ask if you can make him a Thundar the Barbarian setting.
Thundar the Barbarian setting.
Okay,
so
Bob might be familiar with Thundar. I'm not.
I actually remember
I'm up for pretty much anything.
Well, I remember something about Thundar the Barbarian being this was going to originally be the D&D Saturday morning cartoon, but somebody asked for too much on the license, and so they split it off on its own and made Thundar as kind of this was going to be D&D, but now you're going to have to redo the D&D. I don't know. But by the same token, I would imagine licenses are reasonably cheap because it's kind of an out of print setting, if you will. So I don't know. Stephen would like to see a Thundar the Barbarian setting. So
send me an email. We could think about it.
I'm thinking of the rule set I'd like to use for that.
I don't want to digress from Obatron, Stephen, but I'll tell you that Mr. Gygax himself, who I got to know fairly well before his passing, used to have a whole lot nice to say about what all happened with the Thundar cartoon and the license and how it should have been D&D and didn't wind up being D&D, and that it was not his fault. So, but be that as it may, do you have any other specific questions? Anybody? Stephen? Me? I don't know. I'm fascinated by you guys. And by the way, it's a lot harder to break ground, get out there, and become an RPG producer than it was, let's just say 30 years ago, or perhaps a little more. And definitely stick with it. Oh, Stephen says, you know what, Stephen? Do you have a mic? Because I can turn you on and let you just mic ask this. He's asking, have you play tested your setting in Pathfinder or other systems at all?
We haven't done it in Pathfinder, but as we mentioned at the top of the interview, we are Pathfinder fans too. So it is something that we're quite comfortable saying that, if you want to put it into Pathfinder, there shouldn't be any issue with you doing that. If you're using the system list and you see how we've created a chart, more or less, that gives you an idea of, okay, if you're looking at something in terms of difficulty, how hard would this creature be to, for example, if you're looking at it on a chart from rating 1 to 6, 1 being the easiest to kill, 6 being the hardest to kill, if we tell you it's a 4 and you go to Pathfinder and you think, okay, well, 4 is kind of a little more than middle of the road, and I know this other creature in Pathfinder's about that, I would say the middle of the road, then you know that the intent would be, okay, take this and look at that creature, and you can kind of adjust the stats to be similar to that. We haven't actually place tested it in Pathfinder. I have messed around looking at it, judging it based on what I'm familiar with from like GURPS and from D&D, but not actually, not want to get into trouble with saying, oh, this is compatible with, this one or that one or the other one. So that's kind of the approach that we've taken with it, is kind of look at what we know and see how I feel about that. I mean, Savage Worlds is the one we've played the most recently, so that's easy to. We've used Savage Worlds most at figuring out, how easy is it to relate rating system in order to figure out, well, if I want to call this a 4, what would I do to put it in Savage Worlds? And because we are doing Savage Worlds, it's been going both ways. Sometimes we produce things in Savage Worlds and then backtracked it and said, okay, if we were going to make this in generic format, where on the ratings put this? So it's been interesting to engineer both directions.
I think it's also a case where I looked at the world and what I was looking for. While Savage Worlds was kind of pulpy, there's still a grittiness to it. Whereas Pathfinder has a sense of high fantasy, you're increasing into these godlike powers, and I was kind of concerned that it was going to be difficult to kind of really represent the setting in a satisfactory way using the Pathfinder rules.
This brings up it's something I find fascinating, but maybe no one else does. When you write and you're coming up with the next adventure, does your brain work in Savage Worlds mode right now? Does it work in Pathfinder mode right now? It's funny. I just started writing D&D adventures again with Frank and Tim and Jim, and I've now reconverted to writing in first edition mode. But for the longest time, I wrote in legendary adventure mode because that's what Gary and I were doing. What do you guys have as a mode?
For me, my mode is I do not write my scenarios with any specifics, which is what often causes Bob consternation. Because I've written it, and now he's looking at it thinking, crap, how am I going to apply the rules here? And that is where some of our, that's ways where we complement each other, is that if I'm writing something and I don't have a system in mind, I'm writing this because I think this would be a fun adventure.
So you write pure storyline.
Then he's looking at, you really can't look at that. I'm not a rules person, but I do know the rules. So I have certainly gone back and also thought, okay, I need to look at how tough this thing is. I need to look at how hard it is for it to actually hit this thing. So I can work in rules mode. I just prefer not to. Bob's strength absolutely is in kind of the germs of the idea and letting me do the detail work and handling the stats, handling what makes them, what mechanics would make this particular scenario work, this particular creature, this particular item work. So he
does all the hard work, and you do the fun stuff. Yeah, okay, I get it now. All right.
But,
sure, you can put it that way.
To be fair, I also, when I look at a setting, when I came up with Tunziel, I was like, I wanted something for Savage Worlds. So I kind of, when I was thinking about it, I tend to think of it like a setting or something, and I look at, well, which system is going to represent this best? Because, I have like an idea for another setting, and I'm kind of leaning towards the idea that, like, well, this would be, Pathfinder would work really well for this setting, and so would RuneQuest, and, so I start thinking about what systems would actually work best for it, and then then from there I start gelling into the other ideas of the setting.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's strange because I was a game designer before I was ever a story writer, and I think that's why some of us do that sort of thing that way, where we have an approach to it. And having written for Legendary Adventure was more mystery oriented. Go find out what's going on, and by the way, kill the monsters on the side. Versus, of course, Dungeons and Dragons, a little more combat oriented. So I found myself trying to write mysteries for D&D, which is a slightly more difficult proposition when I first started working with the gang. And I just wondered, if you guys, and evidently, and I think I have this right, evidently, Vicky, your approach is you come at it from a pure storyline angle. I write the story and then we turn it into an adventure type of setup. Yeah. So.
Yeah. When I say something that I know is going to,
if it's Vicky's idea, I tend to look at what she's written, and then I kind of say, okay, well, these are the types of systems that actually would really do well with this.
Okay, all right. Well, we have about 5 minutes.
When I'm writing something that I know, okay.
Oh,
but when I'm writing something I know is going to be a scenario, I tend to think of it as what's the main idea. The story, what's the plot? The 2 or 3 lines of what describes the plot. At that point, I start thinking about how can I make this into something that definite sections to it. Here's your first part of the story, so this might be one session. Here's the second part of the story. Here's going to be the second session. And trying to make sure that in each one of those that there's enough action for it to not just feel like you're wandering aimlessly and not knowing what you're supposed to be doing. I have been in situations where I've been at the game and that has us just kind of wondering, well, what are we supposed to be doing? I don't know what we're supposed to do next. I know what our end goal is, but where we are in the story now, I have no idea what direction we're supposed to go. We already interviewed the 4 people we knew about. Went to the scene of the crime, but we don't. We haven't gotten enough clues to know what do we do next. So it's become very important to me that when I'm writing something, what you do next, and I'm not, you must only do it this way approach, because I don't want it to feel that you are being ramrodded into a specific way you have to do something, but in a way that we at least know what we're supposed to be doing in this segment. We're trying to get to the giant tree that's got a great big gap from being struck by lightning 10 years ago. Okay, it might take you 5 hours to figure out how to get to that giant tree, but you at least know where you're going, and you know why. It's not just this random, well, there might be a tree somewhere that, okay, that's not helpful. So that's been important to me, that as I'm developing something, to make sure that it's clear, for the GM, if nothing else, how they can help the players know what they're supposed to be doing and get somewhere that there is a goal.
I hate to wrap this early, but I don't know if you saw my wife behind me. Evidently, we're in the path of a tornado in Franksville, Wisconsin. So we need to shut down and go to the basement.
Go save yourself.
Yeah. I'm not going to turn anything off, but I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. I don't know if I can promote you to running your own meeting. But yeah, she says, honey, you need to go. So I'm going to have to.
Yeah, you need to go. I grew up in Tennessee. Tornado's serious.
Yeah, we get them out here once in a while. So thanks for the chat,
thank you for having us.
And yeah, I'll check in later, hopefully.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. I think, are we done?
Right. Anybody still listening, you can, if you want to join us on the Obatron Productions Facebook or Google+, you can certainly do that. We are at Obatron, and we've got our social media links there. Thanks for joining us. I also have a game in just a few minutes if anybody wants to hop in, because if nobody shows up in 15 minutes, then we'll end. Have a great day.